everyone, and welcome back. Ready to deep dive with us?
Always.
Awesome. So this time, you wanted to go deeper on Martin Van Buren, right? Not just the name in the textbook, but the man. You sent over a fascinating stack of sources, and wow, this guy's life is way more interesting than I ever realized.
Yeah, he doesn't get the same attention as some presidents, but Van Buren was a powerful force.
For real. So we've got excerpts from this presidential history podcast. Gives us a good overview, but also some juicy details, controversies, even his personal life, like enslaved people in the White House. That's serious drama. This deep dive is going to be good.
Yeah, it is interesting how his upbringing seems connected to his political career. Like, it all started there.
All right, so let's unpack this. Tavern keeper's son to president, right? Growing up in his father's tavern, imagine that. Exposed to all sorts of people, travelers, politicians, just everyday folks. It's like politics 101, but in real life.
Exactly. That early exposure, I think it shaped his approach. Like, later on, he's known for building a strong party, grassroots campaigning. That's all about understanding people.
And he moved up the ladder fast. Local politics, then leader of the Bucktails, a powerful New York group. Ambitious guy.
Oh, the Bucktails were hugely important. They shaped the early Democratic Party, pushing for wider voting rights, challenging elites, that focus on party unity, discipline. That became Van Buren's signature.
Okay, gotta ask about this petticoat affair. Sounds like a scandal.
Oh, it shook up the Jackson administration.
Yep.
So Margaret Eaton, wife of the Secretary of War, right, she gets ostracized by Washington society. Rumors about her past.
Juicy.
It is. And Jackson, fiercely loyal to his friends, insists she be accepted.
But Van Buren, always the strategist, sees an opportunity here, right?
Absolutely. He publicly supports the Eatons, aligns himself with Jackson, strengthens his own position. Savvy move. Huge consequences later on.
This is where it gets really interesting. So this alliance with Jackson ends up being crucial for Van Buren.
Oh, totally. Puts him in the national spotlight. When Jackson decides not to run for a third term, guess who's the obvious choice?
Van Buren steps into the presidency, the 8th president, and the first born as a U.S. citizen. That's a pretty big deal.
It is, yeah. Like a symbolic shift, from the generation that fought for independence to a generation born into the nation they lead.
He achieves this incredible milestone. But his presidency, I mean, yeah, there's the independent treasury system and all, but it's quickly overshadowed, right, by a massive economic crisis. What happened?
The Panic of 1837. It was devastating, truly one of the worst economic depressions the country had seen. Yeah, it really tarnished his reputation as president. Many blamed him for not preventing it or for not handling it well.
The sources you sent, they paint a pretty grim picture of this period. People losing jobs, homes, savings. It sounds bleak.
Oh, it was. And there's this added layer, right? The roots of the crisis. They can be traced back to some of Jackson's policies, but Van Buren's own actions or inactions during the crisis, they also played a role.
And then on top of everything else, there were these accusations, right, of extravagance in the White House.
Yeah, his opponents, they jumped on that, portraying him as out of touch with everyday Americans struggling. And this, combined with the rise of William Henry Harrison, this popular war hero, well, it led to Van Buren's defeat in the 1840 election.
Wow, talk about a dramatic turn of events. You've got this brilliant political strategist, right? The architect of the Democratic Party rises to the highest office, then bam, hit with this major economic crisis. It's a real roller coaster.
It really shows how unpredictable history is. Even the most skilled politicians, they can be affected by things outside their control. But his legacy goes beyond this one term, right? We have to talk about his stance on things like slavery and Indian removal.
This is where things get complicated. He's the first president to use the word slavery in an inaugural address. And yet, he supported the institution.
It does seem contradictory, especially from our modern perspective. But remember, this was a time when the nation was deeply divided on this issue. Political realities often demanded compromise.
So how do we make sense of this seeming contradiction?
Well, Van Buren prioritized preserving the Union above all else. He saw slavery as a threat to that unity. He believed that pushing for abolition would just caused a split between North and South.
And this explains his opposition to Texas annexation.
Exactly. Adding another slave state, he thought, would inflame tensions, probably lead to war with Mexico. Whether this was purely a moral stance or also a calculated political move, well, historians still debate that.
It makes you think, the difficult choices leaders faced back then. navigating those treacherous political waters and grappling with such a charged moral issue.
Absolutely. And we can't forget the human cost of these decisions. Van Buren, despite his personal views on slavery, he continued the policy of Indian removal. That led to the displacement, the suffering of countless Native Americans.
It's a stark reminder, isn't it? Even those who achieve great political success, they can make choices that, looking back, are deeply problematic.
It's a challenge for us to consider the complexities of historical figures and, avoid making simplistic judgments.
Let's shift gears a bit. Back to his political achievements. There's no denying his impact on the Tea Party system we have today. He's considered the architect of the Democratic Party, isn't he?
Yes, he was key in transforming the Democratic-Republican Party into the modern Democratic Party we know today. His emphasis on party organization, loyalty, discipline, it created a powerful political machine, one that dominated American politics for decades.
So from those humble beginnings, right, in that bustling tavern all the way to presidential power, Martin Van Buren's story is one of ambition, strategy, and really understanding how power works.
He mastered building coalitions, navigating political storms, and he left a lasting mark on American politics.
But as we've seen, his legacy is also tied to some of the darker chapters of our nation's history.
It's a reminder that even the most influential figures are shaped by their time, grappling with the complexities and contradictions of their era.
Which brings up some important questions for us. How do we reconcile the accomplishments of historical figures with their flaws? How do we learn from their successes and failures to face the challenges of our own time?
It's a question worth pondering. How do we balance our principles with the realities of power? How do we make tough decisions when there are no easy answers?
These are things we need to consider as we, grapple with the legacy of our nation's past and work towards building a more just and equitable future.
Indeed, history isn't just a collection of stories, it's a conversation that's still unfolding.
And on that note, we'll wrap up our deep dive into the life and times of Martin Van Buren. We hope you found it as fascinating as we did.
We encourage you to keep exploring this complex and often overlooked figure in American history.
There's always more to discover, Who knows, maybe you'll find something we missed.
History's full of surprises.
Exactly. So we talked about Van Buren's relationship with slavery, right? How complicated it was. It really highlights just how divided the nation was back then. Makes you wonder, how would you have handled it?
Oh, that's a fascinating question to think about. How do you balance your own beliefs with the realities of leadership, especially in such a divided time?
It's a lot to ponder. And on that note, I think we've successfully unpacked Martin Van Buren, political genius, survivor of scandal, president forever linked to economic hardship.
He was a master strategist, that's for sure, but also a product of his time. His story, I think it reminds us that history is never simple.
There you have it, Martin Van Buren, more than just a name in a textbook. Hopefully this deep dive gave you a fresh perspective on him.
And spark some curiosity, I hope.
Yeah.
Keep learning, keep questioning, keep exploring the past.
Until next time, happy diving, everyone.